The air inside the luxury boutique was cool and crisp, tinged with the faint aroma of expensive leather and polished wood. The store was an architectural marvel, with high ceilings, grand chandeliers, and marble floors that seemed to amplify the soft hum of quiet conversations and the occasional click of high heels. Shelves lined with designer handbags, jewelry, and high-end clothing shimmered under the carefully arranged lighting. Each piece was displayed like a masterpiece in a museum, exuding an aura of unattainable elegance. Shoppers moved about with an air of practiced nonchalance, their wealth subtly displayed through tailored suits, statement handbags, and designer shoes. Store associates glided gracefully between customers, their expressions warm and attentive, offering personalized assistance to those who had already established themselves as serious buyers. Every detail of the store screamed exclusivity, creating an unspoken barrier for anyone who didn't belong. It was into this world that Vanessa and Marcus stepped. The couple, both in their mid-30s, were effortlessly stylish. Vanessa wore a tailored black jumpsuit, paired with a soft, camel-colored coat draped elegantly over her shoulders. Her natural curls framed her striking face, her demeanor confident, yet understated. Marcus, her husband, was equally poised in a crisp navy blazer and leather loafers, his sharp features softened by his easy smile. Together, they looked every bit the part of affluent, sophisticated shoppers. They walked hand in hand, their presence graceful yet unassuming. Vanessa's eyes sparkled with curiosity as she admired the displays, and Marcus's warm laughter occasionally broke the silence between them as he made quiet, playful remarks about the exorbitant price tags. To an impartial observer, they would have seemed like any other couple enjoying a leisurely shopping trip in one of the city's most exclusive districts, but not everyone in the store saw it that way. Behind the counter, the security guard, James, stood stiffly with his arms crossed. His expression was unreadable, but his dark eyes followed the couple's every move. Tall and broad-shouldered, with a no-nonsense demeanor that matched his black uniform, James was an imposing figure. His job was straightforward: protect the store's valuable merchandise, prevent theft, and maintain order. Yet his interpretation of that responsibility often veered into murkier territory. James had worked at the boutique for over a decade. In that time, he had developed an instinct for sizing up customers, or so he believed. Most of the time, he relied on subtle cues: the brands they wore, the way they carried themselves, the credit cards they pulled out at checkout. But his perceptions were often clouded by bias, and today was no exception. The moment Vanessa and Marcus entered the store, James's gaze narrowed. They didn't fit the image he had constructed in his mind of the typical clientele. Their polished appearance was undeniable, but to James it felt like a disguise. He watched them linger over a glass display of diamond necklaces, their quiet conversation punctuated by smiles. They weren't doing anything unusual, but James's prejudice began to color his interpretation of their actions. "They're up to something," he muttered under his breath, his voice barely audible. From his vantage point near the entrance, James scanned the couple with increasing suspicion. He noted how Vanessa leaned closer to the glass, studying a particularly delicate necklace, her fingertips brushing the edge of the display. Marcus, meanwhile, had moved a few steps away, inspecting a row of luxury watches. They seemed relaxed, oblivious to the weight of his scrutiny. A sales associate named Claire approached Vanessa, her polished smile professional but slightly guarded. "Good afternoon," she said smoothly. "Is there anything I can assist you with today?" Vanessa turned to her, her smile warm. "Thank you," she said. "I was just admiring this piece here. It's stunning. Do you mind if I take a closer look?" Claire hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding. "Of course," she said, retrieving the necklace from the display with practiced efficiency. She placed it gently on a velvet tray and handed it to Vanessa, who studied the intricate craftsmanship with genuine admiration. James's hand instinctively moved to the radio clipped to his belt. He didn't press the button to call for backup, at least not yet, but his grip tightened, his instincts urging him to act. In his mind, Vanessa and Marcus didn't belong here, and their interest in such an expensive item only confirmed his suspicions. As Vanessa returned the necklace to Claire and thanked her, James took a step forward, his broad frame casting a shadow over the display. He watched as Marcus joined his wife, the two of them exchanging a quiet word before moving to another section of the store. Their calm, measured movements seemed almost deliberate to James, fueling his bias further. To anyone else, they were simply a couple enjoying an afternoon of shopping. But to James, they were a potential threat, a narrative he had constructed with no evidence beyond his own prejudice. Meanwhile, Vanessa and Marcus were unaware of the storm brewing in James's mind. Vanessa admired a sleek black handbag, its minimalist design catching her eye, while Marcus quipped that it would pair perfectly with the jacket she had purchased last week. Their easy banter and visible affection for one another stood in stark contrast to the tension quietly building around them. The store's atmosphere, once serene, began to shift. Staff members noticed James's increased vigilance, exchanging uneasy glances. Some had seen this behavior before, but most were hesitant to intervene. James's authority as the store's security guard often went unchallenged, and his word carried significant weight in the hierarchical environment of the boutique. As the couple continued to browse, James finally made his decision. With a quick motion, he pressed the button on his radio and murmured a few terse words. Moments later, another security guard appeared, a younger man named Alex, who looked nervous but dutiful. "What's going on?" Alex asked quietly. James tilted his head toward Vanessa and Marcus. "Keep an eye on them," he said. "I've seen this kind of thing before. They're acting suspicious." Alex glanced at the couple, his brow furrowing. "They don't look like they're doing anything wrong." James shot him a sharp look. "Just do your job. We're not taking any chances." As Alex reluctantly moved into position, James squared his shoulders and prepared to confront the couple. In his mind, he was certain he was doing the right thing, protecting the store, upholding his duty. But what he failed to see was the larger story unfolding, one that would soon reveal the flaws in his assumptions and the consequences of his actions. Vanessa and Marcus's story was one of resilience, determination, and mutual support. They were a power couple in every sense, but their success had been earned through years of hard work, overcoming countless hurdles that life had placed before them. Vanessa, a high-profile entrepreneur, had built a successful business empire from the ground up. She had started with nothing but a dream and an unrelenting drive to succeed. Growing up in a modest neighborhood, she had faced the challenges of systemic racism and gender bias, which often left her feeling like she had to work twice as hard to prove herself. But she thrived under pressure. With a sharp mind for business and a deep passion for creating opportunities, Vanessa turned her small startup into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Today, she was a respected name in her industry, often invited to speak at conferences and mentor young women aspiring to follow in her footsteps. Marcus, on the other hand, had carved out his success in a completely different field. A renowned architect, his designs were celebrated for their innovative blend of functionality and beauty. Like Vanessa, his journey to success hadn't been easy. He had faced prejudice throughout his career, often finding his ideas dismissed until someone else repeated them. But Marcus had learned to navigate these obstacles with patience and quiet strength. Over the years, his work began to speak for itself, earning him awards and contracts for some of the most high-profile projects in the country. Despite their achievements, Vanessa and Marcus remained humble. They never allowed their success to distance them from their roots or their values. They frequently donated to charities, mentored young professionals, and used their platforms to advocate for social change. But no amount of success had shielded them from the stereotypes that often accompanied being black in predominantly white spaces. Time and again, they had encountered situations where their presence was questioned or their intentions doubted. It was a sad reality they had learned to face with grace and dignity, refusing to let prejudice define them. Their visit to the store that day wasn't random. They were there to celebrate a milestone, a significant contract Marcus had just secured that would take his career to new heights. Vanessa had suggested they treat themselves to something special, a token to mark the occasion and the hard work it had taken to get there. The boutique was known for its exclusivity and high-end offerings, making it the perfect place to find something extraordinary. As they entered the store, the excitement of the moment shone in their eyes. They weren't ostentatious. There was no need to flaunt their success. Instead, they carried themselves with the quiet confidence of two people who had earned every bit of what they had achieved. But not everyone saw them that way. James, the store's head of security, had been watching the couple since the moment they walked in. To him, Vanessa and Marcus didn't fit the mold of the boutique's usual clientele. Their polished appearance was undeniable, but his deep-seated biases clouded his judgment. He had worked at the store for over a decade, and during that time, he had developed a rigid sense of who belonged in such an exclusive space. In his eyes, Vanessa and Marcus didn't. James took his job seriously. Too seriously, some might say. He saw himself as the gatekeeper of the boutique's exclusivity, a protector of its image. He believed it was his responsibility to ensure that only the right kind of people frequented the store, and he often relied on his own flawed instincts to make those judgments. His biases went unchallenged, as the store's management rarely questioned his decisions. To them, James's stern demeanor and uncompromising approach made him an asset, not a liability. Over the years, James had built a reputation among the staff for profiling customers he deemed suspicious. His targets were often people of color, those who appeared less affluent, or anyone who didn't conform to his idea of what a luxury shopper should look like. While some employees were uncomfortable with his behavior, few dared to confront him. After all, James had been with the store for years and had the full support of the management team. In James's mind, his actions were justified. He believed he was doing his job, protecting the store's valuable merchandise from potential theft. He saw himself as a professional, someone who could read people and anticipate trouble before it happened. But his so-called instincts were nothing more than prejudice, disguised as expertise, and his actions often caused unnecessary harm to those he targeted. As Vanessa and Marcus moved through the store, James's suspicion grew. He watched their every move, misinterpreting their relaxed demeanor as calculated. When Vanessa paused to admire a delicate necklace, James saw hesitation. When Marcus leaned in to whisper a comment to his wife, James saw a coordinated plan. Every action, no matter how innocent, became evidence in the case he was building in his mind. What James didn't see, what he refused to see, was the truth. Vanessa and Marcus weren't outsiders trying to infiltrate the world of luxury. They were accomplished professionals who had every right to be there. Their presence wasn't a threat to the store's exclusivity. It was a testament to the diversity of success and the resilience of those who had worked hard to defy the odds. For James, though, none of that mattered. His biases had already painted a picture of who Vanessa and Marcus were, and he was determined to act on it. He called over Alex, the younger security guard, to share his suspicions, setting in motion a series of events that would challenge not only his perception, but also the store's culture as a whole. As James whispered his concerns to Alex, the younger guard hesitated. Alex had only been working at the store for a few months, and he respected James's experience, but something about the situation didn't sit right with him. Vanessa and Marcus didn't look like they were doing anything wrong. In fact, they looked like they were simply enjoying a leisurely shopping trip. Alex wasn't blind to the prejudices that existed in the world, or in the store, but he also didn't feel he had the authority to question James. "What do you want me to do?" Alex asked quietly. "Keep an eye on them," James replied, his tone curt. "Stay close and let me know if they do anything suspicious." Alex nodded reluctantly, moving toward the couple as James remained near the entrance, his arms crossed. The atmosphere in the store, once serene, began to shift. Staff members who had worked with James for years recognized the signs and exchanged uneasy glances. Some shook their heads subtly, disapproving but unwilling to intervene. Others avoided eye contact altogether, focusing on their tasks and hoping the situation wouldn't escalate. Meanwhile, Vanessa and Marcus remained unaware of the scrutiny they were under. They continued to browse, their conversation light and filled with laughter. To them, this was a celebration, a moment to revel in their achievements and treat themselves to something special. They had no reason to suspect that their presence was being questioned or that their intentions were being doubted, but the tension in the air was undeniable, and it wouldn't be long before Vanessa and Marcus felt its weight. James's decision to act on his biases would set off a chain of events that would not only expose his prejudices, but also force the store to confront the broader issues lurking beneath its polished surface. As Vanessa picked up a sleek handbag and turned to Marcus with a smile, the moment of confrontation loomed ever closer, waiting to unfold. Vanessa and Marcus were nearing the jewelry section, admiring an elegant display of diamond bracelets and gold necklaces, when James finally decided to act on his suspicions. The couple's relaxed demeanor, their ease in browsing items that carried staggering price tags, irritated him. To James, it was a performance, an act to mask intentions he had already decided were less than honest. With a determined set to his jaw, he straightened his posture and began walking toward them. Vanessa was in the middle of asking Marcus for his opinion on a bracelet when she noticed the large figure of James approaching. His presence was imposing, his expression stern. Marcus caught the shift in Vanessa's gaze and turned as James stopped a few feet away, his arms crossed and his eyes scanning them critically. "Excuse me," James said, his tone flat but edged with authority. "Can I help you?" Vanessa's polite smile faltered for a moment before she regained her composure. "No, thank you," she replied evenly. "We're just browsing." James's eyes narrowed slightly. "Browsing for what, exactly?" he pressed. "These are high-end items. Not everyone can afford them." The insinuation was clear, and it hung in the air like an unpleasant odor. Marcus's brow furrowed as he stepped closer to Vanessa, his protective instincts kicking in. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. James ignored the question, focusing instead on Vanessa, who was still holding the bracelet she had been admiring. "Do you intend to purchase that?" he asked, nodding toward the piece. Vanessa frowned, the hostility in his tone becoming impossible to ignore. "I was considering it," she said, her voice measured. "Why does that matter?" James took a step closer, his broad frame casting a shadow over the display case. "We've had some issues with theft recently," he said, his words laced with implication. "I need to make sure everything here stays secure. Lingering too long without buying anything can raise suspicions." The comment struck like a slap. Vanessa and Marcus exchanged a glance, their disbelief mirrored in each other's eyes. The undercurrent of prejudice in James's words was unmistakable, but Vanessa refused to let her anger show. Instead, she placed the bracelet gently back on the tray and turned to face James fully. "Are you accusing us of something?" she asked, her tone steady, but with an unmistakable edge. James crossed his arms again, standing taller as if to assert his authority. "I'm just doing my job," he said flatly. "If you're not planning to buy anything, I'll have to ask you to leave." The confrontation had begun to draw the attention of other customers. A few paused in their browsing, their eyes darting between James and the couple. One or two pulled out their phones, recording the exchange from a discreet distance. The quiet hum of the store was now punctuated by murmurs of curiosity and concern. Marcus stepped forward, his voice firm but controlled. "We haven't done anything wrong," he said. "We came here to shop, just like everyone else." "Then why are you making this difficult?" James shot back, his tone growing more aggressive. "If you're genuine customers, you should have no problem leaving if asked. We reserve the right to refuse service." Vanessa's patience, though remarkable, was wearing thin. She met James's gaze, her voice calm but resolute. "This is unacceptable," she said. "We haven't broken any rules or caused any trouble. The only thing we've done is shop while being black." James's face darkened, his discomfort with her directness evident. "Ma'am, I won't stand here and argue. If you don't leave voluntarily, I'll have to escort you out." At that moment, Claire, the sales associate who had helped Vanessa earlier, approached cautiously. Her expression was one of concern and hesitation. "Is everything all right here?" she asked, glancing nervously between James and the couple. James waved her off without even looking at her. "Stay out of this," he snapped. "I've got it under control." Vanessa, however, turned to Claire, her voice sharp but controlled. "Actually, no, everything is not all right. We're being asked to leave without cause. Is this how your store treats customers?" Claire opened her mouth to respond, but James cut her off again. "Claire, go back to the counter," he barked. "This doesn't concern you." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. More customers had stopped to watch, their curiosity and unease growing. The quiet clicks of camera phones recording the incident were audible now, a subtle but persistent reminder that this confrontation was becoming more public by the second. Vanessa looked back at James, her posture straight and her voice steady. "We're not leaving because we've done something wrong," she said. "We're leaving because you've made it clear we're not welcome here. And believe me, this won't end here." Marcus placed a reassuring hand on her arm, his own anger barely concealed. Together, they turned and began walking toward the exit, their dignity intact despite the humiliation they had just endured. As they passed the onlookers, a few murmured words of support, but no one stepped forward to intervene. James stood rigid, watching them go with a smug expression that barely concealed his satisfaction. To him, he had done his job, upheld the standards of the store, and removed an unwanted element. As he returned to his post near the entrance, he felt a sense of accomplishment, completely oblivious to the storm he had just set into motion. Outside, Vanessa and Marcus paused on the sidewalk. The cold air stung against their skin, but it was nothing compared to the sting of what they had just experienced. Vanessa's hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the effort it took to contain her emotions. Marcus reached for her hand, squeezing it gently, a silent gesture of solidarity. They exchanged a look, unspoken understanding passing between them. They had faced moments like this before, but something about today felt different. This time, they weren't going to let it go unanswered. "We need to do something," Marcus said quietly, his voice filled with both determination and frustration. Vanessa nodded, her gaze steady, despite the hurt that lingered in her eyes. "We will," she said, "but not here, not like this." As they walked away from the store, Vanessa began to formulate a plan. She wasn't sure exactly what she would do yet, but she knew one thing for certain. James's actions and the prejudice they reflected would not go unchallenged. This was not just about them. It was about standing up for anyone who had ever been treated as less simply because of who they were. And as the videos of the confrontation began to circulate online, drawing attention and sparking outrage, Vanessa and Marcus knew the fallout had only just begun. As Vanessa and Marcus stepped away from the store, the fallout of the confrontation began to take shape far more rapidly than anyone, including James, could have anticipated. Inside the boutique, murmurs of discontent among staff and customers reached the ears of Claire, the sales associate, who quickly decided that the incident couldn't go unreported. She discreetly reached out to the store's general manager, Cynthia Monroe, detailing the events that had just transpired. Cynthia, a seasoned professional with a deep respect for the store's reputation and its clientele, was horrified by what she heard. Vanessa and Marcus's names immediately rang a bell. They weren't just casual shoppers, they were longtime clients with significant ties to the brand. Vanessa, in particular, was a respected entrepreneur whose collaborations with the brand had boosted its standing in certain markets. In a stroke of irony, she had even been a guest speaker at a corporate event the year prior, discussing diversity and inclusion in the luxury market. Cynthia wasted no time. She left her office on the top floor and made her way to the main entrance of the boutique, her heels clicking against the marble floors with a sense of urgency. By the time she reached the scene, James had returned to his post, looking smug and self-assured, while customers and staff alike continued to buzz about what had just unfolded. Spotting Claire near the counter, Cynthia approached her first. "Where are they now?" she asked, her voice firm but not unkind. "They just left," Claire replied, gesturing toward the entrance. "But this was bad, Cynthia. The way James handled it was completely uncalled for." Cynthia's jaw tightened. She nodded briskly and turned toward James, who stood rigid as she approached. He straightened further, clearly expecting praise for his actions. "James," Cynthia said sharply, her tone brooking no argument. "I need a word. Now." James blinked, momentarily caught off guard by her tone, but quickly recovered. "Of course," he said, following her to a quieter corner of the store. Cynthia wasted no time. "I've just been informed about your interaction with two of our customers," she began, her voice low but steely. "Explain to me, in detail, what happened." James, still oblivious to the gravity of the situation, recounted his version of events with confidence. "They were acting suspiciously," he said, "lingering too long, looking at high-value items. I was protecting the store's interests." Cynthia's expression hardened. "Suspiciously," she repeated, her tone icy. "And what, exactly, was suspicious about them?" James hesitated, sensing the shift in her demeanor. "Well, I've seen this kind of thing before," he stammered. "People pretending to shop, looking for an opportunity to—" "To what?" Cynthia interrupted, her voice rising slightly. "To spend their hard-earned money in our store. To admire items they're perfectly entitled to admire. Or do you mean to suggest that their skin color was suspicious?" James's face flushed, his confidence rapidly unraveling. "That's not what I meant," he said quickly. "I was just doing my job." "No, James," Cynthia said, her voice cold. "Your job is to ensure the safety and comfort of every customer in this store. Your job is to uphold the values of this brand, which explicitly reject the kind of behavior you just displayed." Before James could respond, Cynthia gestured toward Claire. "Bring them back," she said. "Now, I'll handle the rest." Claire nodded and rushed out of the store, quickly spotting Vanessa and Marcus a few blocks away. Approaching them cautiously, she explained that the general manager wanted to speak with them personally. Vanessa and Marcus exchanged a glance, their initial instinct to refuse tempered by a shared determination to see this through. After a brief discussion, they agreed to return. Back in the store, the atmosphere had grown tense. Customers and staff whispered among themselves, their curiosity piqued by the manager's visible anger and the unusual level of activity. When Vanessa and Marcus walked back through the entrance, flanked by Claire, the hum of whispers grew louder. Cynthia stepped forward to greet them, her expression a mixture of professionalism and regret. "Ms. Carter, Mr. Reed," she began, addressing them with the respect they had been denied earlier. "Please allow me to apologize on behalf of the store for what just happened. I assure you, this is not representative of our values or our commitment to our customers." Vanessa raised an eyebrow, her composure intact but her tone sharp. "And what, exactly, are your values, Ms. Monroe? Because what we experienced here today suggests otherwise." Cynthia nodded, taking the criticism without flinching. "You're absolutely right," she said. "What you experienced was unacceptable, and I take full responsibility for ensuring it never happens again. If you'll permit me, I'd like to address this matter publicly." She turned to the center of the store where staff and customers had gathered, their curiosity now palpable. "Everyone," Cynthia called out, her voice commanding attention. "May I have your attention, please?" The room fell silent as all eyes turned toward her. "I want to address an incident that occurred here today," Cynthia began, her tone clear and firm. "Two of our valued customers were treated unfairly and subjected to behavior that has no place in our store, or anywhere. This is not who we are, and this is not who we strive to be. On behalf of the entire management team, I apologize." She gestured toward James, who stood stiffly near the entrance, his face a deep shade of red. James's actions do not align with the standards of professionalism and respect we require from our staff. Effective immediately, his employment with us is terminated. Gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by a murmur of approval from some of the customers and staff. James opened his mouth as if to protest, but Cynthia silenced him with a sharp look. "To Ms. Carter and Mr. Reed," Cynthia continued, turning back to Vanessa and Marcus, I cannot undo the harm that was done here today, but I can promise you this. Steps are already being taken to ensure that every member of our team receives comprehensive training on unconscious bias and customer relations. What happened to you should never happen to anyone, and it is my responsibility to ensure it doesn't. Vanessa and Marcus listened silently, their expressions unreadable. When Cynthia finished, Vanessa took a step forward, her voice calm but firm. "Thank you, Miss Monroe," she said. "But words are not enough. We'll be watching closely to see that your actions match your promises." With that, she and Marcus turned and left the store for the second time that day. But this time, they walked out with their dignity intact, leaving behind a store that would never be quite the same again. As the couple left the store, their minds were resolute. Vanessa and Marcus had no intention of allowing the incident to fade quietly into the background. What had transpired wasn't just an affront to them personally. It was a reflection of deeper systemic issues that needed to be addressed. They knew they had a unique opportunity to advocate for broader accountability, ensuring that no one else would endure the humiliation they had faced. Back at their home that evening, Vanessa drafted a carefully worded letter addressed to the CEO of the retail chain. In it, she detailed the experience with unflinching clarity, describing not only the behavior of the security guard but also the broader implications of allowing such biases to go unchecked. She highlighted the damage incidents like this could do, not just to individuals, but to the reputation of a brand that claimed to uphold inclusivity and excellence. "We don't seek retribution," Vanessa wrote, "but we demand meaningful change. This is a chance for your organization to lead by example, to set a standard that reflects the values of respect, fairness, and dignity that every customer deserves." The next morning, the letter was sent, and within hours, Vanessa received a call from the CEO's office. The apology was immediate and unequivocal. The CEO expressed deep regret for what had occurred and assured Vanessa that the incident would prompt a thorough review of store policies and training programs. But for Vanessa and Marcus, words alone wouldn't suffice. They needed to see action. In the days that followed, the store announced a series of changes. Diversity and sensitivity training became mandatory for all employees, from frontline staff to senior executives. A comprehensive review of hiring practices and internal culture was initiated, aimed at fostering a more inclusive and equitable environment. Policies were updated to explicitly address racial profiling, ensuring that such incidents would be met with swift and decisive consequences. Meanwhile, James, the guard whose actions had triggered the entire incident, faced the reality of his situation. His termination was swift, and the fallout was humbling. The confidence he had once worn like armor was replaced by shame as he left the store for the last time, his head bowed under the weight of his actions. For the first time, James was forced to confront the biases that had shaped his behavior, biases he had long ignored or rationalized as just doing his job. As news of the incident spread, it sparked broader conversations about racial profiling and systemic bias in luxury retail spaces. Vanessa and Marcus, while reluctant to become public figures in the controversy, chose to use the platform they had been given to advocate for change. Vanessa, drawing from her experience as an entrepreneur and speaker, penned an op-ed for a prominent publication, eloquently addressing the importance of fairness, respect, and accountability in all facets of life. "This is not just about one store or one guard," Vanessa wrote. "It's about recognizing the ways in which prejudice, whether overt or subtle, undermines our shared humanity. Change begins with acknowledging these truths and committing to do better. The article resonated widely, sparking discussions across social media and in boardrooms of other luxury brands. Some praised Vanessa and Marcus for their grace and leadership, while others expressed frustration that such incidents continued to occur. But for the couple, the true measure of success lay in the tangible changes they began to see, not just in the policies of the store that had wronged them, but in the broader conversations their story had inspired. Though Vanessa and Marcus could have chosen a path of retaliation, they knew their greatest strength lay in using the incident as a catalyst for progress. By advocating for systemic change, they transformed a moment of injustice into an opportunity for empowerment, ensuring that the lessons of their experience would ripple far beyond the walls of a single store. Months later, the boutique's employees gathered for a training session led by experts in diversity and inclusion. As the facilitator spoke about the importance of empathy and awareness, the atmosphere was one of introspection and renewal. Among the attendees was Claire, the sales associate who had played a small but significant role in the couple's story. She felt a sense of hope as she saw her colleagues engaging with the material, their commitment to change evident. Vanessa and Marcus, meanwhile, continued to lead their lives with the same quiet strength that had carried them through the ordeal. They knew the fight for equality and respect was far from over, but they took solace in knowing they had made a difference. By insisting on accountability and embracing empowerment, they had turned an act of prejudice into a powerful statement of resilience and progress. The luxury boutique, once a symbol of exclusivity marred by bias, underwent a transformation in the wake of the incident. Under the watchful eye of corporate leadership and the public, the store implemented sweeping changes aimed at eradicating the toxic elements of its culture. Diversity training became a cornerstone of employee onboarding, with sessions focusing on unconscious bias, empathy, and customer relations. Protocols were established to ensure that no customer, regardless of background, would ever face discrimination again. Regular audits of store practices and staff behavior were introduced to uphold these new standards. The management team made a point to publicly acknowledge Vanessa and Marcus's role in driving this change. A statement was issued by the CEO, expressing deep regret for the events that had unfolded and outlining the steps being taken to ensure accountability. "This incident has been a wake-up call," the statement read. "We are committed to learning from it and becoming a better, more inclusive organization." Vanessa and Marcus, though reluctant to remain in the public spotlight, agreed to make a brief statement to the press. Standing side by side at a community event focused on promoting equity, Vanessa spoke with her signature poise and clarity. "This wasn't just about one moment or one store," she began, her voice steady but passionate. "It's about recognizing the insidious ways prejudice manifests in our everyday lives. It's about choosing to confront these issues with courage and grace, even when it would be easier to walk away." Marcus added, "We're not here to point fingers or dwell on the past. We're here to advocate for a future where everyone is treated with dignity and respect, no matter who they are or where they come from. Progress isn't about perfection. It's about effort and accountability." Their words resonated deeply, drawing applause from the audience and sparking further discussions in the broader community. The couple's calm but powerful response to the incident became a model for others facing similar challenges, a reminder that resilience and advocacy could drive meaningful change. In a quiet moment, some weeks later, Vanessa and Marcus decided to return to the boutique, not as an act of forgiveness, but as a reclaiming of their right to exist in any space with confidence and self-worth. As they walked through the doors, heads held high, they were met with warm smiles from the staff and a noticeably different atmosphere. The store's new protocols were already making a difference, fostering a sense of welcome and inclusivity. As they browsed the shelves, Vanessa paused to admire a necklace she had noticed on their first visit. This time, the experience was free of tension or suspicion, a small but significant victory. When they left the store hand in hand, their presence symbolized not just personal triumph, but a broader message of hope and progress. In interviews and public discussions, Vanessa often closed with a powerful reflection. Prejudice has no place in progress. Respect is the real luxury. The phrase became a rallying cry for change, a reminder that the most meaningful victories come not from confrontation, but from transformation.